When we think about cities, we usually focus on what we can see. Buildings, roads, transit lines, neighborhoods. But cities are not just physical systems. They're social systems, designed systems, political systems. Every city is shaped by decisions about who belongs, who is prioritized, and who is protected. Those decisions are rarely random. They're guided by demographics, how populations are counted, categorized, and interpreted. In urban planning, demographics influence where housing is built, where infrastructure goes, how schools are funded, and which neighborhoods receive investment. They also shape something more subtle. Which communities are framed as stable, risky, desirable, or expendable. This video looks at demographics not just as data, but as power, specifically as planning tools. To understand how we got here, we need to start at the beginning, with how demographic categories were constructed in American cities. In urban planning, demographics describe the characteristics of a population. This includes race and ethnicity, income and wealth, age and household size, immigration status, disability, education, and employment. From the earliest days of professional planning in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, demographic data was used to classify populations and manage urban growth. Planners relied on census data, housing surveys, and neighborhood maps to decide where infrastructure would go and who it would serve. On the surface, this appeared objective. Numbers felt neutral. Maps felt factual. But even early planning theory shows this neutrality was just an illusion. Choosing what to measure and how to interpret it was always a value-based judgment, and those values reflected the political priorities of the time. To understand those priorities, we need to understand whiteness as a planning category. Whiteness has never been fixed. In the early 20th century, many European immigrants were not considered fully white. Irish, Italian, Jewish, and Eastern European communities were often segregated, over-policed, and described by planners as urban problems. They were concentrated in dense neighborhoods, or ghettos, denied access to mortgages, excluded from desirable areas. Planning reports from this era use language like congested, unstable, disorderly. These labels justified disinvestment. Over time, many of these groups were absorbed into whiteness. That shift aligned with expanded access to homeownership, federal housing programs, and exclusionary zoning protections. This wasn't cultural assimilation alone, it was policy. Whiteness became the baseline around which planning systems were designed. These classifications collided with reality during the Great Migration. Between roughly 1916 and 1970, more than 6 million African Americans left the rural South. They were pushed by Jim Crow segregation, racial violence, economic exploitation, and political exclusion. They were pulled by industrial jobs, wartime manufacturing, and the promise, often unfulfilled, of better living conditions. This was one of the largest internal migrations in US history. Cities changed rapidly, not gradually, not incrementally. For planners, this was not just population growth. It was a test of whether cities would expand access or reinforce boundaries. Chicago provides a clear example. As Black residents arrived, they were confined to a narrow strip on the south side called the Black Belt. This was enforced through racially restrictive covenants, redlining, zoning restrictions, and violence. As the population grew, density increased, housing deteriorated. This overcrowding is often blamed on migration itself, but planning history shows it was a result of constrained supply. Black residents were prevented from moving into surrounding neighborhoods, even when housing was available. When boundaries were challenged, planning reinforced them. Urban renewal displaced communities. Highways cut through neighborhoods. Investment followed exclusion. This was not accidental, it was systematic. Detroit followed a parallel path. The auto industry created enormous demand for labor, drawing African Americans north. Jobs expanded rapidly. Housing access did not. Planning allowed industrial growth without equitable residential development. Suburban municipalities used zoning to exclude lower-cost housing. Fragmented governance protected wealthier areas from regional responsibility. As white and newly white populations moved outward, tax base, infrastructure, and political power followed. Detroit's decline is often framed as demographic inevitability. Planning theory reminds us population change does not cause disinvestment. Again, policy does. These city-level patterns were amplified by federal policy, FHA-backed mortgages, VA loans, interstate highways. These programs expanded wealth for millions of Americans, but access was unequal. Communities classified as white entered suburban housing markets. Black Americans were systematically excluded. Zoning enforced the separation. Minimum lot sizes, single-family-only districts, municipal boundaries. Race disappeared from policy language in the late 20th century, but the outcomes remained deeply racialized. Planning became formally neutral while remaining structurally unequal. Exclusion didn't disappear, it evolved. Disinvestment was reframed as market decline. Segregation was reframed as personal choice. Demographics continued to shape outcomes even when planners claimed neutrality. This is where planning theory pushed back. Advocacy planning, equity planning, critical planning theory all argued the same thing. Ignoring inequality does not eliminate it. By the late 20th century, planning stopped saying the quiet part out loud, but the systems didn't go away. They just changed shape. Today, immigration enforcement is one of the clearest ways those older patterns of exclusion show up in our cities. To understand how immigration enforcement shapes cities today, we need to briefly look at where ICE comes from. Immigration and Customs Enforcement was created in 2003 following the September 11th attacks and the formation of the Department of Homeland Security. Before ICE, immigration enforcement was largely handled by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. After 9/11, immigration policy was reorganized under a national security framework. Immigration enforcement became linked not to labor or civil administration, but to policing and counterterrorism. From its creation, ICE was designed as a federal law enforcement agency with broad discretion, limited oversight, and expansive detention authority. Across administrations, its tactics and priorities shifted, but its core structure remained intact. Under George W. Bush's administration, ICE expanded rapidly, embedding immigration enforcement within a national security apparatus. Under the Obama administration, deportations reached record highs, even as enforcement was framed as focused on serious criminals. In practice, many people with no violent history were detained or removed, often through partnership between ICE and local law enforcement. That blurred civil and criminal boundaries. Under the Trump administration, ICE enforcement became more openly punitive. Priorities expanded, protections narrowed. Fear became an explicit deterrent strategy. Raids were publicized, court appearances became enforcement traps. Legal status became increasingly precarious. Under the Biden administration, rhetoric shifted again. Some enforcement priorities narrowed, some protections returned, but ICE's underlying structure, detention, surveillance, and removal remained largely unchanged. For cities, the impact has been consistent. ICE does not just enforce immigration law, it reshapes urban life. Raids destabilize families. Fear reduces school attendance. Workers avoid public services. Tenants avoid reporting unsafe housing. From a planning perspective, this undermines community stability. But this is not a new pattern. Immigration enforcement exists within a much longer American history of overcriminalization, state-sanctioned violence, and police brutality. Black communities were criminalized through vagrancy laws, Jim Crow policing, and mass incarceration. Indigenous communities were controlled through forced removal, reservation systems, and federal surveillance. Asian immigrants were excluded through bans, quotas, and racially targeted enforcement. Latino communities have long experienced border militarization, workplace raids, and racial profiling. In each case, law and policy framed inequality as enforcement. Violence was legalized. Displacement was bureaucratized. Harm was justified as order. ICE continues this lineage. It operates through surveillance, detention, and removal, often without viable pathways to citizenship or legal resolution. This is not neutral administration. It's police brutality. It's the use of state power to punish instability rather than address its causes. Cities are left managing the consequences. vacant housing, economic disruption, psychological trauma. Planning systems rely on trust. ICE erodes it. When residents fear the state, they disengage from civic life. And when people disengage, planning fails. These impacts have forced a reckoning. As enforcement destabilizes communities and erodes trust in public institutions, planners have had to confront a hard truth. You cannot plan effectively for communities that are living in fear of the state. This is where contemporary planning responses emerge, through diversity, equity, and inclusion frameworks and reparative approaches designed to rebuild trust and address historical harm. In planning, DEI is not just an ideology, it's analysis. It asks who benefits, who bears harm, who was excluded before. It aims to improve accuracy, not assign blame. Modern planning increasingly includes reparative tools, anti-displacement strategies, community land trust, inclusive zoning, targeted reinvestment. These approaches recognize that history shapes outcomes. Markets don't reset inequality, they inherit it. When planning moves from neutrality to accountability, it reveals something fundamental. Cities are not just places, they are decisions made visible. They are the physical record of decisions about people. Demographics tell us who lives where. Planning history tells us why. Understanding this timeline does not divide cities, it explains them, and better explanations lead to better decisions. The future of urban planning is not just about growth, it's about belonging. If you want to keep unpacking how planning, policy, and power shape everyday life, my name is Jasmine. This is Understanding Urbanism. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.